All right, we're good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I call this meeting to order at 10:02. If you can please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Chair, do we have any, can you take roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Lopez.
Present.
Committee Member Chang.
Present.
Committee Member Edry.
Present.
Committee Member Gavinia.
Present.
Committee Member Gonzalez.
Present.
Committee Member Ibarra.
Present.
Committee Member Froberg on. I think he is absent at this point. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we will move on to, do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'm sorry, can you please state your name when you're making a motion?
Apologies. Frank Gavinia moves.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Change second.
Motion by Member Gavinia, seconded by Member Chang to approve the agenda. I'll call the roll. Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Member Chang.
Yes.
Member Edry.
Yes.
Yes.
Member Gavinia.
Aye.
Member Gonzalez.
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will take public comments from members of the audience. If you would like to provide a public comment through Zoom, please click the raise hand button. Are there any public comments?
There are currently none.
We will now move on to presentations. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is selection of chair and vice chair. With the reorganization of the committee back in June, this is the first opportunity the committee's had a chance to select its new chair. Sorry, I'm just trying to open too many windows at one time. Give me 1 second. Chair Lopez has served as chair for 2 consecutive terms, so she is not eligible to serve as chair again. The code requires that the chair and the vice chair be from different appointing categories, which are listed in the agenda report. So it would be appropriate for a nomination for chair and vice chair for the upcoming year.
I would like to nominate Frank Gavinia for chair.
I'll second.
Motion by Chair Lopez, seconded by Member Edry to nominate Frank Gavinia to serve as chair. I'll call the roll. Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Member Chang.
Yes.
Member Edry.
Yes.
Member Gavinia.
Yes.
Member Gonzalez. Member Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries. Chair Gavinia, I will send you the scripted agenda, but if you wouldn't mind Member Lopez continuing on for a moment while we get that to you.
Absolutely. Totally
Okay.
fine.
So it would be appropriate to solicit nominations for vice chair. Chair Gavinia is a Vernon area representative. So per the code, if we're selecting from a different appointing category, Member Chang is a business representative, and Member Gonzalez is a legislative representative. As Member Lopez has served as chair for the last 2 times, I believe she can serve as vice chair, but wouldn't be able to move into the chair role.
Just to double check, Member Lopez served as chair, as vice chair.
One moment.
The sound. Can't hear him.
Yeah, Member Gonzalez, we're struggling to hear you. Now it sounds like you're underwater.
Oh, Lord.
We can hear you again.
That's better.
That sounded better.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify, Member Lopez can served as the chair, but can serve in the capacity as vice chair, but cannot serve in capacity as chair. So I'm assuming that then that's okay, correct?
The code doesn't say anything about her serving as vice chair, but it might be better to select someone from a different category if possible.
Understood.
I would like to nominate Mark Gonzalez as vice chair.
Well, I was gonna nominate you just to see if it would work. But okay, I'll gladly accept.
Is there a second to that motion?
Chang, second.
Motion by Member Lopez, seconded by Member Chang to nominate Member Gonzalez to serve as vice chair. Chair Gavina,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Chang,
Yes.
Member Lopez,
Yes.
Member Gonzalez,
Aye, yes.
Member Ibarra.
Yes.
Motion carries. Chair Gavina, did you receive the script or would you like me to help you? We're currently on the consent calendar.
Yep, I have it here.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for the nomination. I'm a little bit surprised since I'm new here, but I will do my best. I promise I'm good at reading off of scripts. So we will now go to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are to be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any member of the committee. Those items removed will be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Does any member of the committee wish to pull the item from the consent calendar? Looks like a no. Are there any public comments for the consent calendar? As a reminder, if you want a public comment on Zoom, hit the little raise hand button, please.
I don't see any.
No raised hands.
All right then, so may I have a motion for consent calendar item number 2?
I'll move Lopez.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Ibarra.
Motion by Member Lopez, seconded by Member Ibarra to approve the minutes of the May 19th, 2021 committee meeting. Chair Gavina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Chang,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Ibarra,
Aye.
Member Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Now we will go ahead and move on to new business.
Item number 3 is fiscal year 2021-22 docket 1 Vernon Community Fund Direct Services Grant. And Administrative Analyst Figueroa will present the report.
Hello, good morning again, grant committee members.
Diana, you're gonna have to move closer or speak louder.
Okay, is this better?
A little bit. You sound a little muffled.
Okay, I will yell.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I first just would like to welcome our newest members, Committee Member Edry, Committee Member Gavinia, and Committee Member Ibarra. We appreciate your interest and willingness to serve on this board, and we look forward to working with you. Moving on to item number 3. As you're all aware, there are a number of grant recommendations to cover in our meeting today. This is one of the largest single dockets that we've seen thus far. We are aware that this process may take a fair amount of time, so JRG will briefly share with the committee some highlights of each of the organizations and allow time for deliberation and questions. The committee has taken action or approved each grant one by one in the past. However, the committee does also have the option to hear about all of the grant applicants first and then take action. We will proceed in accordance with the direction of the committee. So I'd like to ask at this time if there's a preference for either option. Would you all like to hear one by one each of the grant recommendations and then take action? Or would you like us to go through the entirety of the list and take action at the conclusion of the presentation?
I think we should go through all of them and then take action at the end. What does everyone else think?
That's fine. I was just a point of information. I had asked Diana, who thankfully got me the list of everybody who applied, and the ones who did not were not recommended. I wanted to see if I could recommend a couple of others rather than a couple of the ones that are recommended and have a discussion, but I just wanted to see what would be more appropriate to have that conversation. Am I still underwater?
No, sorry about that. So I don't know, maybe I'll defer to Fran. Do we want to go through the recommended grants first?
Yes.
And then visit or discuss maybe those grantees that you are recommending from the entire list of applicants?
It would be appropriate to have the staff report first, which would be Fran's presentation, and then discussion on that recommendation.
Then I go ahead and move to have the presentation first, and then we can discuss afterwards.
Yeah, we don't need a motion, but we'll just proceed.
Okay, perfect. I'll now turn the mic over to Fran Jamat of the Jamat Rollins Group to present the particulars of each grant recommendation before you today. And Dominic, I know I provided a supplemental document. If you can display that for our committee members, that would be great. As Mark just mentioned, the entire list was provided to him as per his request, and we've also included that in this supplementary document for everyone to see, so everyone has that information as well, along with some high-level summary of each of the grants that we're recommending today. And we've tried to organize them a little bit for you on this document, so please feel free to take a look. I don't know, Dominic, if we can zoom out a little bit and show more of this, the page. And it is.
Is something like that better? Or more?
Maybe a little bit more. Does that work, Fran? Do you think that's going to work and we can kind of scroll through as needed?
Oh, sure. We have a hard copy here, and if I need to read, because I would be challenged to read that, but that's an issue for me, not for the mechanics. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all. It's great to see you again. It feels like another sign of normalcy to have a meeting of the Vernon Community Fund. I am appreciative of meeting the new members. Frank Gavinia, I think we may have met at the coffee factory when Michael took me on a tour several years ago, and I've always wanted to come back. So maybe I could just drop by and we could talk some Vernon business and then and give you an orientation to the committee, or we could do it another way.
Oh, absolutely. That would be totally fine. And we're always happy to have folks come and share a cup of coffee.
It's a great place to visit. Thank you. Ronit, we had a minute to touch base before the meeting started, and I'm always happy to meet another Golden Doodle Mama. And I welcome you and hope that you'll be able to follow along with what we're doing here today. And again, we can arrange either a group kind of orientation or one-on-one as you desire. Good morning, Michelle. I can't see you, but I think we've met before, and I welcome you to the committee as well. And if you have any particular questions, I think we can use the chat. I guess the IT person will help if you want me to stop at some point. Otherwise, we'll begin the process. I did want to ask for the privilege of some preliminary thoughts that I think will be useful to set the context, as Diana said, that this was an unusually large docket. And if I could provide a bit of the context to frame the discussion this morning and to provide some background for your voting, it would perhaps be helpful. So this is twice as many grants as the grant committee usually considers. As a result of changes in the availability of funds and administrative costs, these awards are the result of a review period significantly shorter than in previous years. As a reminder, the Vernon fiscal year begins July 1, which was when the notice of funding availability, we call that a NOFA, a notice of fund availability, was announced and disseminated to the communities. The deadline for submission of grant applications was September 30th. 28 applications were received. 2 of those were deemed ineligible, I believe because they weren't qualified, 501c3s, or some other reason. 26 applications were reviewed with requests totaling $1.7 million. However, the total allocation for all grants under review at this docket is $375,000. So here we are confronted with the art and science of grant making. So as the management consultants, our job is to review all of the applications and then recommend which ones come forward to the committee. And we do that internally with our own team. And this would be a good time to thank James Hull, who is on the call with us, and he is our IT manager. And James receives all of the applications and does the first scrutiny to make sure that each applicant has responded to the questions and has provided the materials required. In addition to James, we have our program associate, Letitia Pinckney, who is not with us this morning. And we have 2 additional consultants that we had to bring on to help with this large docket. That would be Sandra Butler and Jonathan Macaranis. In this case, we were able to process and qualify the grants recommendations that are before you this morning. The internal deadline for submission of recommendations to the Vernon City Administration was November 1st. So you see, between September 30th and November 1st, we basically had the month of October to review, touch base with the grantees, do site visits if we could, at least talk to everyone. And then in quite a few, because we had to adjust the amount of funding that they requested versus what we could give, we had considerable back and forth. over a period of approximately 6 weeks, then we've gotten to the point where we are this morning. I want to assure you that while this may sound like I'm complaining about a lot of work, it is not a complaint. It's a comment. And I wanted to let you know that during this time, I spoke with many of my colleagues who work in organized philanthropy in foundations or other funding situations. And the Vernon situation is not uncommon among funders of this at this time of unprecedented need and social upheaval. With that, we did some research and recognized that within the field of philanthropy, it was becoming known that organizations with budgets of $500,000 or less, their annual budget is $500,000 or less, were experiencing the greatest loss in donations. In other ways, there was a fall off of contributions because of, let's say, COVID and competing demands. And the organizations that felt that most intensely were organizations, small organizations with budgets of $500,000 or less. Unlike prior grant cycles, the Vernon Community Fund would not be able to consider all of the eligible applications, nor under our new administrative procedures can we roll over grant applications to another cycle. So I think, Mark, this may go to your point. At this time, because we have this one meeting a year in November to consider all of the applications that come in, we have to work with a hard deadline for submission. And we also have to, therefore, deny any grants that are not approved by the grants committee. And the ones that are before you today are ones that have been recommended based on the extensive due diligence that's required for us to credibly bring a grant application forward. That we have to make hard choices and follow guidance we previously gleaned from city administration. I don't think these are hard and fast policies. I want to claim our role as management consultants, that we've been here since the beginning of the Vernon Community Fund. We've listened to all of the deliberations that have taken place in the grant committee meetings. And we've come to understand where some priorities exist. And in terms of looking through 26 applications and sorting them out according to some criteria that would make sense given the limitations of what we could actually do, we felt that we would, forgive the pun, zoom in on the following. We would fund organizations that are actually based in Vernon, in the city of Vernon, because they contribute to the well-being of the city, which has a growing population of residents and businesses and just people who are in Vernon on a daily basis. We would focus on direct service because there is such a need at this time. Housing, homelessness, nutrition, violence prevention are direct services that have been the focus of prior grant committees, and we have been able to prioritize grant applications in those areas. We would support grants that support children and youth, given the changes that this population has undergone in terms of schooling and daycare and recreation, that during the past 2 years almost, the amount of dislocation has been largely it has been increasingly experienced by kids who have been learning remotely, have lacked social engagement typical of a school day. Many after school and weekend recreation programs were canceled. And so as people began to open up, we wanted to make sure that services for children and youth were a priority of our grant review. And finally, we wanted to support advocacy and capacity building efforts to strengthen nonprofits in the Vernon catchment area. The committee has long had a concern, particularly in the southeast part of the catchment area, that the level of I'm going to use the word sophistication, but I'm aware that that could be not a good word. That there are fewer nonprofits, and that those nonprofits located in the Southeast have fewer resources in terms of grant writers, connections to other funders, experience in navigating the grantsmanship world. And therefore, the organizations have far fewer resources and are disproportionately affected in times like a COVID pandemic. So with all of this in mind, we present to you the applicants that whose applications we felt addressed those priorities. Would you like me to move forward now and go through each of them one by one? Thumbs up from Member Gonzalez, thumbs up from Frank Cavina. Great, okay. The first is a returning grantee, the Alzheimer's Association of Greater Los Angeles. While they have a budget of $6 million, in excess of $6 million, a very small proportion of that budget addresses the needs of families in the Vernon community, and particularly monolingual Spanish-speaking families. The grant from Vernon assists in providing case management and support to families who are providing care to a family member who is experiencing Alzheimer's and significant dementia. And their request was for $20,000, and we are recommending $20,000. They are a returning grantee. They have received funding in the past. They have fulfilled their grant requirements. Their reporting is up to date. And in fact, the organization tries to be in regular communication, at least with the management consulting team, by keeping us informed of developments. There is a significant increase in need for support to Spanish-speaking Alzheimer's patients in Los Angeles. The second recommendation is for California Derby Dolls, a business that is located in the city of Vernon and is experiencing financial distress. As you can see, their annual budget is well below the $500,000 threshold. It is under $200,000. And that is because the organization depends on admission fees and membership fees. And so for 2 years, they have suffered under the COVID, or almost 2 years under the COVID-19 quarantine regulations. They have created an arena and they do the banked derby events in the city. They reach out to women and girls, typically between 17 and 25 years of age, although some are younger and some are older. They applied for $60,000. We are recommending $15,000 in grants to help them out until they can rebuild their membership, as well as the fees from people who attend their events. They are well-known in the city of Vernon. They have in the past invited the police department, the chief, to come, and the police department comes and brings the old police cars, and they enjoy a very congenial relationship with lots of city organizations. And I believe the former mayor, was actually a whistle starter at one of the Derby events. So in that they're in the city of Vernon and contributing to the quality of life, and because they do support recreation, we want to recommend them for $15,000 so that they are able to rebuild their budget. Sentinel Youth Services is not located in Vernon and is a new organization. Sentinel Youth Services provides restorative justice for young people who are diverted from the juvenile justice system. These are young people who have committed misdemeanors or some felony crimes, and rather than incarcerate them, if their judge or police department or whomever is amenable to it, they can be referred for restorative justice. And restorative justice is a process of mediation in which the offender and their family meets with the victims, who are usually the business owners. It usually involves theft, some damages, and there is a process worked out whereby the offender is enrolled in the program, is assigned a mentor, a case manager, and takes responsibility for providing restoration to the victim, the business owner. Increasingly, this organization, which is based in Hawthorne or Inglewood, I believe, has been servicing young people in the eastern part of LA County. And they find the need to have a base in and around Vernon to work with youth-serving organizations and to better support the caseload of young people that are being referred to them. They requested $24,924 to pay a portion of the salary of a case manager. We're recommending a $15,000 grant, which we see as more of a planning grant to work with the Vernon Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, other law enforcement and youth-serving organizations, so that they can establish a presence in or near Vernon, and possibly return in a subsequent grant cycle for the funding to actually operate the program. And that was amenable to them. So we are recommending a $15,000 grant to Sentinel Youth Services. Chicas Roqueras is an arts organization in the southeast part of LA. And it serves a marginalized population of LGBTQ girls. And the mission of the organization is to encourage their artistic expression, support their ambition to work in the entertainment industry, provide them mentorships, and assure that they can complete their education, specifically high school and at least 2 years of college, and then assist them in finding employment in the entertainment industry. They are a returning grantee. They were able to pivot and maintain services throughout the COVID-19 pandemic by using virtual communication. And even though they dispense with some of their large public events, they were able to increase the enrollment of girls and young women or non-gender conforming individuals in their programs. And they are, from their reports and from our research, having a very positive impact. They applied for $48,000. We are recommending $25,000. Community Partners is a fiscal agent for one of our returning grantees, Las Fotos project. Las Fotos is a photography, visual arts training program for girls, and they have been very successful with their prior grants. Their reporting is very proficient, excellent. Their financial management is excellent. The young women have continued to engage in activities and are earning income as photographers at events, and they are expected to return to that. The recommendation of $20,000 is half of what they requested. It was $40,000, and they are committed to increasing enrollment and supporting the creative arts, the creative expression through photography of the young women. The East Los Angeles Women's Center is a returning grantee. Their budget is close to $5 million. They requested $100,000, and we are recommending $50,000. This is one of the organizations that provides direct service, most importantly, violence prevention, housing, and wraparound services for families experiencing domestic violence. Our research indicated that with the end of the eviction moratorium, a general increase in the level of crime, and particularly domestic violence during the COVID pandemic, that we ought to fortify the organizations that are working hard to keep families safe and help to find them supportive housing, even though that is increasingly difficult to do in East Los Angeles. So the recommendation is for $50,000. The Girl Scouts is another organization with a hefty budget. It's the Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles. However, the services that are required to maintain the Girl Scout troops in the eastern part of Los Angeles, in the Vernon catchment area, suffer because there are not enough volunteers to sponsor troops, Brownie troops, Girl Scout troops, and so and troops that accommodate linguistic difference. So the Girl Scouts, this is their second grant, if approved, from the Vernon Community Fund. They actually hire a staff person that works with parents, that conducts troop meetings in homes and in neighborhood centers. They recruit girls and provide the leadership training, entrepreneurial training, adventure work. And the Girl Scouts has a stellar reputation for supporting these young women, many of whom go on to give back to the Girl Scouts and to their communities in very meaningful ways. They requested $30,000. We recommended 20,000, and I think the numbers, the Girl Scouts supports 593 additional troops, 583 girls, and 118 adults in the Vernon community catchment area. So that's extraordinary. And we think it's worthy of a contribution from the Vernon Community Fund. The Helping Hand Society of Los Angeles is a new organization and one that is based in Vernon. It is, the mission of the organization is to alleviate the burden of the needy. And they do this in collaboration with a Vernon business. And they have opened a warehouse, and they provide, they collect and provide food to organizations that service the homeless and people who are food compromised in the Vernon area. They are a new organization, and this is really the work of a couple, and they have been 20-year volunteers in the food collection and distribution charitable work that's done throughout the county. They were founded in 2020, and they are, again, enthusiastic, not residents, but they're located in Vernon and support many of the activities. Most recently, I believe, I wasn't able to make it to the Halloween festival, but they were able to collect hundreds of toys from Disney to distribute at the Halloween event. And they're very enthusiastic participants in the life of the city, and they are doing great work. They work with Whole Foods, Farmer John's, major vendors in the city, collect the food, refrigerate it, organize it, and then deliver it to organizations, but they also provide food directly to people who come to the warehouse. And I think that that's the kind of nonprofit development that the city would like to support, but that is editorial opinion. Okay. LA Family Housing, like the East Los Angeles Women's Center, is involved in finding permanent supportive housing to people at risk of homelessness, families particularly. They buy, renovate, lease, and procure by any means necessary housing to make it available to the growing numbers of individuals who need those services. They are a returning grantee. They have continued to support at least 200 families in the Vernon area. And we believe that the services that they provide are consistent with priorities of the fund. And so we are recommending, we couldn't recommend the $70,000 they requested, but $50,000 that will go to permanent supportive housing and case management services. Southeast Community Churches. This is an organization again with a budget under $200,000 that's been around for a very long time and informally organized out of a parish in Southeast Los Angeles. They requested $50,000, and we are recommending $50,000 because they managed to use a network of churches and church volunteers to provide services to people in need, particularly those who are living on the streets, who suffer from mental illness, who need case management support. They need food and shelter. They provide shower locations where people can clean up and get nutritious meals. They do an amazing job through their volunteer network. The request for $50,000, we believe by providing that $50,000, we will strengthen their capacity to continue providing these services in a very underserved part of the community. The Southeast Community Development Corporation is a returning grantee. They have, it's been a few years since they originally applied and received a grant. They are requesting support to supplement the services that promote expansion of broadband to underserved areas, to provide computer literacy and computer centers where families can have access to safe places to meet the increased demand of families to have computers for kids to attend school, for all to make medical appointments. So much is dependent now on having computers. Families don't have them. They need places to go. They need people with linguistic proficiency to assist them. And so the Southeast Community Development Corporation has come back to us with a request. And we are recommending $23,325. I believe we wanted to do 25,000, but we were under the limit, and so we reduced that to 23,325 to fit within the amount available. The last two, Southeast Los Angeles Collaborative, is a new organization. It's a fiscally sponsored organization by the Human Services Association. It is an organization that is definitely needed in the southeast part of LA. They will provide capacity building, technical assistance, and organizational development support to the nonprofits. The collaborative is a partnership kind of among major organizations, including Cal State LA, Raphael Sonnenschein, the YMCA, Victor Dominguez, the Human Services Association, Friends in Schools, very large nonprofits, all of which want to do more and better work in the southeast part, but recognize they need community partners that have the organizational proficiency to be on the ground in the system. And so they are providing technical assistance to them to strengthen what we have long recognized as the need for better organized nonprofits in that part of the catchment area. And our last one is the Woodcraft Rangers, again, a returning grantee. Sorry, SELA is a new organization. Woodcraft Rangers, a large organization, hefty budget. they provide services through the schools for after school and recreation. They have worked closely with the Vernon School. And so many of the children who go to school in the Vernon area, who commute with their parents to work and need places after school until their parents get off from work, are the beneficiaries of services provided by Woodcraft Rangers. They asked for $30,000 to provide summer camp and after-school activities. They have performed well in their other grant awards and met the conditions of their grants. And so we are recommending $30,000 for them as well. That concludes our recommendations. Thank you all for listening. I know that was a lot.
Thank you very much for running through that presentation. It is a lot, but it's fascinating to hear the kind of background with these organizations and the work that they do. So it's much appreciated.
Thank you, Frank. I hope that everyone has a chance to review the full documentation that that the city provides, so that you can look at the entire grant recommendation and the rationale. And I think it saves us time in these meetings.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Does the committee have any technical questions for staff?
No technical questions, and Chair Gavina, if I'm out of order, somebody just let me know. I just wanted to ask about a couple of the orgs that were not recommended. And then I just want to say, Fran, first of all, thank you and your team for the work that you do. For those of you who are new, Fran is a legend, and she's done a lot of really good work in the community, and I've gotten to know her a little bit through this process. And so this was certainly really hard, I think, for her and her team to put together. I certainly just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the folks who were not chosen. I took some notes here just to ask a couple of questions. I trust Fran wholeheartedly. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, made my own observations. I certainly did my research and wanted just to ask about a couple of organizations that were not recommended, and just to see if we could have a middle ground. But like I said, I trust Fran wholeheartedly, and I just wanted to ask a couple of questions.
I'm open to that. I'm not sure
Oh, okay.
where you are in the order. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to out of any parliamentary procedures, Chair Gavina, or is there any, should I ask now?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that
I was just curious about Puente Learning Center. Were they just not, they weren't recommended, were they just not good, or?
Oh, no. Oh my, let's clear this up right now.
All right, maybe I used the word.
Yeah, Puente Learning Center is a wonderful organization. I know it. I've visited them many times. They have a stellar reputation. One of the determinants for us was access to other funding. And so Puente Learning Center has a well-developed development team, and they are well known to the philanthropic community. And as compared to some other organizations, they are better positioned, given how much money that we could have provided in this grant cycle. I'm not certain that it would have been the best use of the Vernon dollars. And I feel confident that Puente Learning Center and other organizations are really well positioned to both receive other philanthropic dollars. And as we see the federal funding unfold, unfortunately, we don't have an up-to-date given the logjam in Congress, but it is expected that organizations that provide the kinds of supports to kids and families that Puente does are going to be in line to receive more substantial funding from the public sector. Of course, we had hoped to to hear more about that, but we haven't. So this is not a commentary on anybody's work. Everybody.
Yeah, I used the wrong verbiage. I apologize for that. I was just, yeah,
Mhm.
but that's a fair assessment on that one.
Mhm.
What about Proyecto Pastoral?
Oh, again, come on, Mark.
Well, no, I'm just saying that because my notes we're really southeast heavy, and we're not really north of Vernon heavy, and
At
so
all, yeah.
that's why I'm
We
just.
funded them in the past, and Father Boyle just got what, $2 million to.
Oh, never mind. Move on. That's you went to
To
that.
support that work.
Understood. No. That was state dollars. A lot of this was state dollars. So okay. Good.
Okay.
Next step for that. Unless anyone's. What about Via Care? Because we didn't talk a lot about health or telehealth, and I'm curious about Via Care.
So we didn't recommend any of the major clinic providers, and there were several that applied. And again, the expectation is that they are going to have funding reinforcements. And I know that everybody's has been stretched thin through the COVID pandemic, but they also have received additional supports during this time. Again, it was the kind of our read on where's the best use of this money, and to look at healthcare where most of their services are reimbursable versus organizations that really don't get reimbursed for services. We felt that we would, yes, for sure, focus on the southeast part of the area. This is the first time we've had substantial numbers of applicants from the southeast. It's been in the history of the Vernon Community Fund underserved, and also we have supported the large clinics in the past, and what we can provide for them when they apply for something specific, like we have provided the visit, the computer check-in, the patient kiosk. Thank you, James. I couldn't think of the words. We provided patient kiosk. We do very specific, measurable grants to the clinics, and when they ask for general operating funds, it's kind of like they too are able to have access to funding that other organizations aren't able to access.
Okay.
It's a judgment call.
No, I understand, and I don't want to take over the meeting. And if any board members I want to jump in, feel free to. The only last one I was just curious about inner city struggle, but I think they also have a lot of access as well, correct?
And we've done both general operating and capital grants. The Vernon Community Fund was a large contributor when we did capital grants to
the inner city struggle.
Inner city struggle, yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The only ones, yeah. Okay, and okay, that's fine. That's fair.
So glad you're here, Mark.
Well, I looked at the list and I just thought about how big this has been since my time on here, and I was like, this is amazing work that we're able to do. And on a personal note to the board members, I've worked with probably 23 of these organizations in various capacities, and I really like the work that Fran mentioned about some of these newer groups under 500,000. I mean, 20,000 for them, for an organization that operates under 500,000 is huge.
Yes.
Obviously, various different ways in terms of LGBT, the photos folks, the Sentinel groups, and all these other groups I think are so diverse in terms of what we are lucky and able to provide. The only two that I'm red flagging that I would, did I get kicked off?
No,
There I
we
am.
can hear you.
Oh no, my technology doesn't like me today. The only two that I would be curious to remove and maybe make another recommendation would be I understand the Alzheimer's part of it, and I understand what you said about the Spanish portion of it, and then obviously the East LA Women's Center. But Alzheimer's has a $6 million budget, and then East LA Women's Center has a $5 million budget, and they both, I think, have access to other much bigger funders. So I'd be curious if we could replace that with like a Via Care, and then I don't know if any of these other folks are under the, under some sort of another. Well, inner city, you said. Neighborhood music school, I didn't ask about, but I'm familiar with them. But I mean, I just wanted to discuss that piece of it. The other ones are out because I think of what you said is fair. But these are all I mean, the Inglewood one, I think is fine. It's a little further out, but I think the commitment with the City of Vernon Police Department and having a caseworker there is key. But I mean, obviously I don't want to, like I said, if the other board members want to ask questions.
Thanks, Mark. Those are good questions. You and I tease each other a lot, so I appreciate your compliments and the teasing. I'm not sure how we would replace an applicant at this time, because we have not done due diligence on we couldn't do due diligence on all 26 applications. So we've only done it on the ones we're recommending. If you would want to pull those two and redistribute the funds among other organizations that are here, I think that might be possible. I'd have to rely on the city and to give us some guidance. I would say that yes, Alzheimer's has a terrific budget. And if you look at the distribution of their services and where most of their clients are, it's heavily West Side weighted. And providing services in Spanish language it is remarkable, but also by people based in the neighborhoods who get to know the neighbors and understand what families are coping with. I am not certain that even given more money from other sources, that the on the ground work to do outreach to families in our communities of interest in Southeast Los Angeles would take place, because many people who donate to the Alzheimer's Association are giving money for specific reasons, and they come from other communities. So I'm very mindful that we often in low-income marginalized communities just aren't able to make the contributions to these service organizations that cause them to then, move personnel and support to our communities. I would say that about the Girl Scouts, and I'll say it about Alzheimer's. And as for the Women's Center, East LA Women's Center, I would just ask that we consider what we know about the increase in domestic violence over the period of the COVID-19 pandemic, and understand that perhaps we at JRG, because we work closely with other clients, the Blue Shield of California Foundation, we have more access to data on domestic violence and the toll it's taking on families and children in Los Angeles. And I think these organizations are barely able to keep up with the demand, particularly for housing.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, but some of these housing organizations are getting a lot of state funding, like Proyecto Pastoral got the 2 million. There's some of these housing corps are getting millions also from the state as well. So like I said, I preface it by saying this is a really hard decision to make. I just wanted to throw in like a couple of these other orgs that I know, one's obviously a health related and obviously maybe a music one, and the domestic violence ones is extremely key. A lot of these are key. They all play a very, very big role in this, but I personally think that the Alzheimer's one in particular, looking at their website, has major funders, rather than some of these other smaller ones who I think would love this opportunity, just because it's not, some of their focus is a little bit more micro than macro. But I mean, again, it's up to the board, and like I said, I trust Fran, and just wanted to ask a couple of questions. These are all great orgs.
So are you recommending that we not fund Alzheimer's at 20,000 and then move that $20,000 to another applicant on the current docket?
Yes.
If I could just chime in really quickly and just speak to some of like the process that we might go through here to make any changes. Just want to let the board know.
I'm sorry, it's really hard to hear you.
Okay, I'll try again. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. So just want to let the board know or reassure the board that changes can absolutely be made. You have the authority to do that. What we might be able to do, as Fran mentioned, the due diligence is still required for some of the organizations that are not on the recommended list that we provided today. If the committee desires to consider some of the other grantees, potential grantees on the list here before you, we would potentially be able to return, well, we would be able to approve allocations of funds to those contingent upon the due diligence. So if for example, Via Care was an organization that the board wished to contribute funds to, we would ask how much, and Fran could then conduct the due diligence. And if there were any negative findings or if things just didn't line up in some way, we could then return with a special meeting and speak to those issues or concerns. And then the committee could make decisions at that point. These are just kind of ideas to put in your head to move forward here. Of course, if everyone's content with the 13 and just wishes to move some funds around a little bit, that is also possible.
Well, I didn't mean to stir a pot, but if there are other board members who want to, I mean, like I said, I don't want to rubber stamp anything. I want to have a discussion, but if any other board members want to add anything, I mean, I'm not married to either way. Like I said, Fran's our girl.
I am a little curious as to the point that that was brought up, Mark and Fran, in connection with the Alzheimer's Foundation. So the $20,000, and I hear, you know, the focus for that organization is primarily on the west side. $20,000 out of a $6 million budget is 30 basis points. I mean, is that going to be sufficient to shift an organization's focus or to cause them to pay a little more attention to our side when it's comparatively a drop in their bucket?
Correct.
What they typically do, it doesn't support their full program, but they do have the Spanish language access project. And I'm looking at the application. So the total budget of the organization is large, but that project budget is not. And what happens is with that project budget, they hire community-based indigenous community members to serve as advocates and connectors to families. So I asked, for example, what do they do? So you could hear stories about the neighbor that calls the Alzheimer's Association and says the family next door is selling their furniture, and in order to get food, And we know that the older gentleman has Alzheimer's and he's roaming around in the community searching garbage can. So they will intervene, go to that house, enroll that family in their caseload, and particularly if it's an undocumented family, they will bring in all of the services that are needed to address that situation, which their other services could include. Yes, they could go to a day treatment center. They could get regular health and social welfare visitations. I mean, we're talking about someone whose salary arguably is not $30,000 a year, who is fielding these calls and going and visiting these families and making recommendations to help those families. And yes, there's lots of donors and lots of service centers, but they aren't located in our part of the community.
Understood. Thanks for the clarification. And yeah, I mean, I love the Alzheimer. My grandfather passed from Alzheimer's on my mother's side, so it is near and dear to my heart. So I understand how painful that can be for families that don't have access to resources. And
if you go to a LA County health or public health facility and you want to enroll in services, and first of all, you have to have some sophistication to even know to do that. And many times people with dementia simply want to remain in their own homes and they don't want to be institutionalized. And so they avoid any kind of interventions. So to have a proactive way of reaching out to families through churches, civic organizations, however, I think is useful. And we look at it, Frank, is what does the service dollar buy? What does it purchase? So it's like for $33 a beneficiary, here's what you get, and you can't do that, anywhere else. So when we compare what is the cost benefit of a $20,000 contribution, it works out to be extremely beneficial.
Understood. Any other comment from other members of the, we're not a commission, right? We're a committee. Any members of the committee?
Committee member Edry, you're on mute.
I have a question. Sorry, my microphone was off. Are the organizations required to provide some sort of documents if you ever have to audit or go back? And if it is, what type of documentations are you looking at? Just explain a little bit about the due diligence part, if you would. Also,
that's a great question. Thank you. We require and follow guidelines for established charitable organizations. So even though the city of Vernon is a municipality and it's not a foundation, the fund benefits from operating with guidelines that are typical of foundations, which are highly scrutinized by the Internal Revenue Service. So the Internal Revenue Service requires that charitable organizations apply for and receive what is called the 501c3 exemption, which means that people can make donations to those organizations and get a tax deduction. So you, Rita, could donate $10,000, that would lower your taxes. And the IRS is going to be curious, well, who are you giving this $10,000 to? And are they really doing charitable work? So every year that charitable organization has to report to the IRS on what is called a Form 990. about their contributions, where they came from, and why they should still be considered charitable. And there have been a number of very famous cases in the news lately where there have been abuses. And so our job is to make sure that no Vernon grantee is going to show up in the news for having abused the IRS charitable exemption. So basically what we do is we ask for all their organizing documents. So we in this docket, we had to ask people for their bylaws because we just weren't certain how the organization was operating. We do look at their IRS exemption, their application, if they're in their initial exemption period. We look at their sources of revenue. We look at whether or not they're getting other charitable contributions. We look at the size of the contributions and where they're coming from. So if the organization has a $500,000 budget and $400,000 of it is coming from one place, then we want to look at that place and see what is the relationship between this place and this charitable gift. So what we look for is broad public support so that organizations have diverse funders, and that they could be corporations, they could be foundations, they could be individual donors, and it could be earned income. We want to see a funding pie that shows that they have public interest and investment in their work. And then we interview the executive director, and if we have to, board members, to find out how they feel the organization is running and operating, and what they think the benefit of a grant from Vernon would be. We do what Mark is doing. We look at the website and try to evaluate from our perspective what is both the need for the funding and we want to make sure that the organization, that their administrative costs are not so high. This was with another client, but we had a nonprofit that applied for $125,000 grant, and they had less than $500,000, but they were going to pay the executive director $180,000 a year. So our recommendation, we don't make the decisions. Our recommendation to that client was, we wouldn't fund that. And in some cases, we'd ask for the job description. What would be worth $180,000 a year? So as I said, this is both art and science. There are these documents that absolutely have to be in place to make sure the organization is operating with integrity. But even when those documents are in place, there's another level of diligence to say, is this reasonable? Are the salaries reasonable? Are the expenses reasonable? Is the board sufficiently diverse to represent a range of community interests? And we look beyond that and question what to us would satisfy the Vernon Community Fund's interests. And we certainly would want to know if there was any history of scandal or abuses. So we might look at other public records if needed.
Thank you for answering that.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
And then we get reports every 6 months from the grantees. They have to tell us what they're doing with the money and show us the allocation. So we look at the figures as well.
This may be more of a procedural question for city staff, but at what point, I guess, would it be optimal? So like Mark's questions about diverting funds from organization A to organization B, when is the correct time or the easiest time to be bringing those up from that due diligence perspective and everything else?
So the meeting today is specifically for the committee to deliberate and decide if the recommended dollar amounts are appropriate for these organizations. We have had on occasion monies moved around. We've had recommended amounts reduced or increased. Or on one occasion, I believe we had one organization completely omitted from the docket. So you have autonomy to make those decisions here today. And, I don't know that we've encountered, at least during my time working with this committee, I don't know that we've encountered a time where we're looking at the full docket, or I'm sorry, the full list of applicants and kind of perusing in that way. But we also haven't had this number of applicants before. So this is a unique situation. And of course, as Fran already mentioned, these are all worthy organizations, and it's a very difficult decision to leave some of them off of the docket. So that's where your decisions and your deliberation come into play. We do ask that for your help in determining where the monies should be going. And I'll just throw this out there as an alternative to kind of evaluating some of these other organizations that haven't been included in today's docket. What we can do is we can flag your favorites and we can encourage them to, or maybe automatically consider them for the next round of funding, kind of put them on a short list, if you will, and we can, that's another option. There are a number of ways to go about this. It really depends on the committee's collective decision to move forward with the recommendations as is or alter them in some way. So we encourage the discussion and your questions, and of course, welcome any changes that you're willing to recommend here today, and we'll do our best to accommodate that.
I would just throw in there, I would take out, if appropriate,
I'm
the
sorry.
Alzheimer's.
Sorry, Vice Chair Gonzalez, before you deliberate and provide commentary, I would just request that we take any public comment. I don't see any hands raised, but if we'd like to give the
No,
public
I
the
apologize.
opportunity. If any of the attendees are interested in addressing the committee, can you please use the raise your hand button?
At this time, there are no raised hands.
And we have an idea of how many people are attending?
There are 8. One is my staff, and I'm not sure, one is a phone number. I know there was some chatting back and forth earlier on. We have someone from East Los Angeles Women's Center, Helping Hands Society of LA.
Well, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any raised hands, so Chair Gaffina, it would be appropriate if the committee is prepared to deliberate.
Do people know how to raise hand? Maybe we should remind or tell people how to raise their hands. Maybe that's the case.
Sure. For the users at home attending Zoom, on the Zoom call, there is a raise hand button when you move your mouse on the screen. Please go ahead and click that if you'd like to make a comment, and I'll allow you to speak once clicked.
I think we're okay to proceed.
So with no public comment, let's go ahead and open deliberation at the committee level.
Thank you, Chair Gavina. I just wanted to see if we could if the board is open to pulling the Alzheimer's of Greater Los Angeles and moving it to the wish list for next time, and maybe adding, my concern was that it was Southeast heavy and not really much of the North, but if we took care of like a Via Care that kind of has a variety of help within that area, because during the pandemic and keeping in mind, a lot of health centers were not reimbursed at all in the beginning for a while from the state and the federal, when some of them were doing telehealth. And I think that this might cover an umbrella within that organization. I'm looking at the Alzheimer's Los Angeles, and they have about 12 major foundations that are funding them, 4 huge corporations, major funding from county government. So I'd rather kind of fulfill the umbrella of taking care of a northern part of the surrounding area of Vernon with replacing with maybe a Via Care, so that we have at least one health specific related clinic, which is the first line of defense for that particular, for our community, rather than the Alzheimer's one, and put the Alzheimer's one on the next list for next time. But extraordinary work, Fran. I really like a lot of these. The Girl Scouts one, I didn't consider some of the stuff that you said about the True Mothers. The Sentinel one, that's a great partnership. Helping Hands, I love that. That sounds phenomenal. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I mean, I took notes on everything. I think this is great, but that's the one I would like to pull and replace with at least having a health center in the northern part under that umbrella.
Thank you, Mark, again. I really appreciate your comments. And perhaps what I could inject here in an unbiased way, given how many biases I just show up with all the time, that we really don't have a good way to collect insights from the committee prior to presenting the docket to the city administration and making decisions. And if we look at what is best practice in philanthropy, it usually is that the board of the foundation confers its power to the staff to make decisions and judgments and bring those recommendations to the board. And of course, the board can vote them up or down and recommend changes. So that's a little bit in the space where we are now. What VIA applied for is for dental. Their application respectfully requests $60,000 for dental services to low-income families, and it's particularly urgent due to the pandemic, during which time families have delayed dental care, and that's reasonable and honest and honorable. So I think that the geographic spread, the question about the geographic spread that we considered is that we have been consciously trying to make up for the lack. I mean, for 4 years of the Vernon Community Fund, we didn't have grantees in the Southeast section. And now that, and recently we've, because of a lot of outreach and the work of organizations like CELA, we're beginning to get the word out to organizations, and we are getting more than 1 or 2 applications. So this regional conflict that I think a geographic issue that you're raising, Mark, and I think you have a really good eye for it, is one that the committee in the past has really asked us to address. And so they've asked us to address the Southeast. They've asked us to address requests from organizations based in Vernon. They've asked us to focus on homelessness. And so the culmination of all this is what we've tried to apply in this context here. I don't know that the Alzheimer's organization is focused on Southeast Los Angeles as opposed to Boyle Heights and the north part. I can't say that because they give us numbers according to the zip codes in the entire Vernon catchment area. So I would want to be clear if we're going to make distinctions between north and south, so to speak, that we're not excluding organizations that we really haven't asked to define exactly where in the catchment area they're providing services. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes 100% sense. And I'm looking at page, what the page is this? Page 12, and that kind of shows what the umbrella and where they're at. I just, to Chair Gavina's point, I think it's key that, that particular organization has so much funders and foundations and grants, and they want to spend a certain amount to finally pivot toward a Spanish-speaking audience, and I get that. But like I said, it's a West Side organization focused primarily, it's trying to focus their attention on this side, but they do get a lot of state and federal funding and have been and continuing. It hasn't necessarily stopped. I'm just thinking about the health center aspect of it and the clinic side of it. Southeast Community Development Corp, they do a lot under their umbrella organizations. Southeast Collaborative, the churches, you have faith-based. I mean, I think it's a great variety. I think we just need to add a health clinic component to this variety, is my only ask, rather than just the Alzheimer's piece of it. I think the health centers have been the first in the front lines of this, and I would just ask for that particular reason. That's it. These other orgs are great. I mean, looking forward to it.
Understood.
The Sentinel one in particular, that seems awesome. Which, yeah.
So, Vice Chair Gonzalez, it would be appropriate for you to make a motion if you'd like, and see if you get a second, and then vote on that.
The motion to reconsider via care over Alzheimer's Greater Los Angeles, is that appropriate?
I think you would be eliminating the requested, the grant amount of $20,000 from Alzheimer's and moving that towards via care contingent on positive due diligence. If that's
Correct.
what you're saying. I'm not sure where the LA Women's Center funding came in.
Quick question, if I may, before we make a motion for Fran. So I did notice part of the discussion around Alzheimer's was they have this $6 million budget, right? Via Care has a $25 million budget. So if we're trying to go from a let's not give too much money to big budget organizations, does this make sense?
I think it's fair, but if you look at their websites, I mean, one has 12, 13 foundations and sure might not have a lot of costs and overhead of 6, but then healthcare is 25. You have to keep in mind though, that health centers, if you don't have health insurance and you go to a health clinic, you have the money has to come from somewhere. And so a lot of these families, when they go to health clinics in particular, especially during the pandemic, especially in communities who didn't have health insurance, went to health clinics to get tested twice a week to be able to go to work. They went to health clinics to get the boost, to get the shots in general. And so poor communities of color relied on health clinics in particular for those services. Whereas I think the focus and emphasis should be on that rather than, and I know my argument there, because the same can be said about other organizations like Woodcraft. I see your point, but I'm looking at the numbers on that, and I didn't mention that particularly because I think that what I'm saying is counterintuitive to other arguments. And so I'm taking the $6 million budget out of it, but looking at their website and seeing how all of these multiple foundations are funding them. And I just wanted to add a particular health center in particular, because health clinics are huge. I mean, I'm not involved with this one in particular. I just think health is such a huge and important factor within the area of Vernon, and then I just wanted to switch it rather than, especially since they're a returning grantee versus VIA, who's new.
Though these funds, if they went to VIA, correct me if I'm wrong, Fran, would go for dental services, right? It wouldn't necessarily go into like a slush fund that might cover these COVID-related tests that you're talking about.
Exactly. Their request was specifically for dental care. And I would just like to add that maybe more than one motion would be made, that the motion to withdraw funding from a recommendation that each of those be treated individually. And then once that's done, maybe then we could talk about what would do with the funds that were withdrawn.
I would just want to make sure that, that Mark is getting what he thinks he's getting from VIA Care, right? So would that be a matter of them reapplying perhaps with a different scope of where the funds are going to be used that's more closely aligned with the intention of the committee, where those funds would be used? So for example, going with the COVID care versus the dental care.
Well, James could probably tell me when this application came in, but they applied for dental care. I would not, it's not our job to switch their request.
Okay,
We
so
have
I
had-
would, yeah, then I would say even more so important is dental care, especially in the area where people don't have dental at all. Suffice it to say, not even health insurance. I didn't have dental care till I started working for the state legislature in 2009. So I would say even more so, dental care is important with kids who stayed at home, eating probably junk. They weren't getting, normal meals at school. And so, that created an even huge imbalance. And so I think dental care is even more important in particular. What am I doing? There we go.
So I believe we have a motion by Vice Chair Gonzalez to not allocate $20,000 to Alzheimer's Greater Los Angeles and allocate that $20,000 to VIA Care contingent on positive due diligence. Mark, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I approve.
And just as a point of clarification, so if the due diligence is not approved, this would have to be brought back to the committee?
If the due diligence is not approved, there's still $20,000 to allocate. So it would be appropriate to have a special meeting for the committee to consider where to allocate those funds to.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Let's see if we have a second first before we discuss. No second? Member Edry, do you want to make your comment?
Oh, I was wondering if Mark would consider not completely canceling that grant, or maybe taking a portion of it, a portion of the 20,000 and allocating it versus completely eliminating.
Yeah, if it's a substitute motion, I approve. Absolutely. If it's appropriate.
Did you have a specific amount, Member Edry?
No, it was just something it's something that I was discussing with Mark, if this is something you might want to recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. I really take these, look, guys, I'm not trying to be difficult. I really take these grants really seriously, and I work a lot of nonprofits in this area, and 5 of which I didn't even want to necessarily go over, just because of I understand the bigger picture and that they all have their own funding sources. I just think we're neglecting pieces of what these grants could be used for. I mean, I know Derby dolls, I think they're great, but I mean, there's a whole other factor there too. There's other ones that you could kind of weed out, but I just really focused my, healthcare I think is huge, and we're not giving anybody in health in particular anything this round, but I'm not married to it. I just don't want to rubber stamp any of these. I just wanted to have a conversation, and that's okay. I'm completely open with that.
I think that's a great question for staff and perhaps for Fran in particular. Why wasn't healthcare on the short list? You know, why did no one pass muster in that area?
I could respond. Am I on mute? Oh, we look at what they're requesting the funding for, and generally, if there is funding available for those kinds of services elsewhere, I'm sure Mark knows, there are 250 or more health foundations in California as a result of the conversion of for-profit nonprofit health plans like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Health Net. When they all converted to for-profits, then all of their assets were put into trusts, which are the major health foundations. And those are the foundations that I think when you look at the websites of health clinics that are funding them. And in our area, the California Endowment, the California Wellness Foundation, the Unicare Foundation, almost every hospital has its own foundation. So health, a lot of funders are deferring their requests for funding health specific to encouraging applicants to first go to the health foundations as their primary philanthropic resource. We have funded health foundations when they ask for something specific that has, as James pointed out before, when they needed a patient kiosk at the Maywood Health Center. Of course, that's a very specific, measurable thing that we can look at and say, this is good. And sometimes a capital purchase is not an easy thing for a health clinic to get. I'm just saying that many organizations that do work in health are facing that sort of cold shoulder sometimes from foundations, and they say, why don't you ask the health foundations to do this? Because they're the funds that are available to do other kinds of work. And that could be true of the Alzheimer's Association too. I mean, that's a health issue, but they aren't a specific health organization, as is a clinic. They don't provide health care
information because it's I tend to defer to staff quite a bit, in decision making. That's kind of the experts in the area. So I think that discussion like this, where we're second guessing is not the right term, but just verifying, kicking the tires on staff's recommendation is really good. But I want to make sure that we're really understanding why you made the recommendation that you did, because I'm sure there was a ton of due diligence and well articulated arguments as to why it would go that way. But I think Committee Member Edry's recommendation might make a lot of sense, right? Of perhaps splitting some funds here to get some participation from this organization that Mark would like participating, while also honoring, the recommendation made by staff and all the work that went into assessing the probable impact of those dollars. You said bang for buck earlier, I believe, and that I think it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that, and the wisdom of trying to address the legitimate concern raised by Member Gonzalez. There's also the option that VIA could come back to us with we're offering them $10,000 now. I'm not sure how much that's going to do in terms of dental care, or where they are now since they applied in August in terms of funding for this program. But they could come back at another time for more funding, for a higher request, or more in terms of their, what I think Member Gonzalez is really concerned about is the deficits that they may have occurred because of the extra work and the need for supplies and equipment during the COVID pandemic. I'm certainly willing to reach out to them, but I'm just asking you to weigh the wisdom of a $10,000 donation, how far that's going to go for either organization versus if they really need $25,000 or $30,000, the opportunity to come back at another point.
Sure, I just want to state I'm staff myself to a member, so I completely get what it is to be staff, and I'm also other organizations I participate in as well. So I get that, and I value staff's input 100%. I'm fine with going with the recommendation of what's in front of us, keeping in mind the various components of what each of these.
We lost
you.
Lost audio.
Oh, how about now? 1, 2, 3.
You're back.
Yep.
I would just say, with what you recommended, Fran, and going back to them and speaking to them and maybe just applying again next time, I think I'm fine with that.
So you're withdrawing your motion?
So on the contingency of what staff has recommended, I'm happy to rescind my motion, excuse me.
So with the clarification that we want VIA on the short list for next time, right? We want to make sure that they get a fair shake.
Yes, Chair Gravina, thank you.
Okay, so then I guess we would need a motion to approve this as recommended, correct, Lisa?
I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Chair Gonzalez, seconded by Committee Member Edry, excuse me, to award fiscal year 2021-22 docket 1 direct service grants totaling $373,325 to the 13 grantees recommended in the staff recommendation. Chair Gavina?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Aye.
Member Lopez?
Yes.
Member Edry?
Yes.
Member Chang?
Aye.
Member Ibarra?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thanks everyone. And really, really great discussion. I think that was fantastic. Now we will go and move on to oral reports if there are any.
I do have a brief report. I'll yell again, sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just kind of to reiterate, I know we have a few new members on our committee, and we would like to ensure that details regarding grantee application and the selection process and the criteria for selection and the overall goals of the committee are fully understood. So if anyone wishes to learn more, we can certainly coordinate. I know Fran mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, but we may coordinate an orientation with yourselves and JRG in the near future, just to kind of go through some of that with you. Again, if you're interested, please just let us know and we'll be happy to set something up. And I do appreciate the deliberation today, and I appreciate all of your time, and really thank you for joining us. And I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. We won't be seeing each other before then, so enjoy.
And if I could, for the new members, we'll be mailing your oath to you. If you could read it and sign it and send it back, we'll get you sworn in officially and on the committee.
I would like to add that we do have an orientation that we've done. It's a PowerPoint. I know James is on the call. James went through it probably most recently. We can arrange to do it by Zoom. It's really an opportunity to go through in detail the kinds of questions that came up today. If that seems like something you have time to do and would like, we can certainly set that up. I too want to wish everybody a wonderful holiday and thank you very much. I know this was a difficult docket to get through and I so appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and same happy holidays to everyone on the call and all the attendees. Any reports from committee members or staff we need to look at? No? All right, then, without any further business, I will adjourn this meeting at 11:53 a.m.
Wow, we got through it.
Thank
Less
you,
than 2
everyone.
hours. Good job, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Happy
everyone.
holidays,
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye, Fran. Happy
Bye, Zaina. I'm gonna call you. Bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye.